We've lived long enough to see Chad become the villain of the podcast.
Welcome to No Clip. I'm Chad Rutherman.
I'm JJ Artemis.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, it is the new year. It is 2018. We're recording this on the 2nd of January. And,
like all New Year's, we're starting things out right by giving up completely. Changing everything about ourselves for a very short period of time, only to revert back to our normal schedule.
Correct. Our New Year's resolution is to not release any late episodes after this one. So, yeah, if it isn't clear, we're pushing the release date for our Mirror's Edge episode to the week after this one, because of the holidays. We're kind of doing this to buy a little bit of time, and this week we're going to try and do a year in review of 2017, kind of talking about like what games did this year, because I think it's been a fairly interesting year.
People have been talking up this year in the gaming media, a phrase that I'm still uncomfortable to say for unclear reasons. They've been talking of 2017 a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people have said, but like, I feel like there are these ebbs and flows to sort of like trends and how popular things are. And I think that 2016, all in all, was a much better year when it came to like the AAA scene of like, it felt like people were taking risks and making games that were good despite like not adhering to, you know, your law of averages previous crop. And I feel like 2017 has really kind of let the indie scene and the AAA scene sort of commingle in a way that they haven't in a long time. Because I feel like the independent game scene really got huge in the early 2010s, when people were sort of just sick of the yearly release thing. That's when yearly release became like a household vocabulary term for people who played games. And nowadays, it's sort of like there's a backlash against the new Assassin's Creed. There's a backlash against Battlefront 2. Like basically anything that was like a long-running series. And I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing in the long run.
God, I knew it was going to be inevitable, but when I was sitting down and trying to think of the kind of things that I wanted to talk about for some approximate year in review, I picked out two things that was like, I'm going to try, if at all possible, to avoid this. And one of them was, of course, Battlefront 2.
I feel like there's a 0% chance that we could avoid, like even before when we thought we were going to be doing a Mirror's Edge episode today, I was already planning to open by going, since EA is basically the most popular developer in video games right now, we're going to talk about Mirror's Edge. And I think the joke applies. Like, it is a game that is, like, completely dominated the public thought on video games for, like, long before it ever came out.
Indeed. And it has, which is why my list was, like, perspective. Like, I was hoping beyond hope that we could not talk about the loot box thing, but I knew it was inevitable, so I just wanted to delude myself for as long as possible until the podcast actually began. Andy, hater of shooters.
Yes.
How up to date are you?
Lover of shooters.
I love guns. How much do you know about all of this nonsense?
Not nearly as much.
Oh,
as
this is going to be
the two
good.
of you, I'm sure. Are you talking specifically about the loot box thing?
And not necessarily, just Battlefront 2 in general.
Oh.
Hate for EA as like a broad overarching.
Well, I'm well aware of that.
Of course.
I mean, no one likes EA.
EA ends up being in the unfortunate position. I say unfortunate position. They made their bed, but like. As like Activision, who also made their bed, and a number of other sort of developers that like once you get so successful, the public just like turns on you and goes like, "Oh, go fuck yourself." And while I would happily say "go fuck yourself" to somebody like Bobby Kotick, I feel like EA doesn't have, because they have the one guy whose name I don't remember, meaning obviously he couldn't possibly be as bad, that people like to hate on. EA's just kind of been a do-nothing company for so long.
Yeah.
Like, they release the same, like, 5 franchises every year and sit in the background and, like, some people play their games. And I think Battlefield, rather, is, like, their last remaining vestige of, like, quote-unquote, the hardcore.
Yeah,
So,
how long has it been since EA has been, like, a respected developer?
Since their 2007 crop kind of like withered and died from a franchise perspective.
And it feels like it's been even longer than that.
Yeah.
And that was 10 years ago.
I'm just saying that's when they made the effort. It was like roughly around 2007 to try and create a crop of games that were distinct, different, and got a lot of attention. And then they realized that when you try and take risks...
Mirror's Edge, naturally, I got no clue.
When you try and take risks, you can't milk risks constantly, because it's very dangerous to milk risks over and over again. So they stopped and are just doing this now.
Anyway, so, yeah, EA fucked up pretty bad at trying to take the, like, 4 or 5 or so franchises that they developed in the late 2000s and make them into like an Ubisoft style let's produce a game every so often of this type. And it really didn't pan out. No. Mirror's Edge actually is an interesting case on that because its follow-up Catalyst didn't come out for like 9 years after the original, which is weird for that style of game, and also was generally regarded as like the most mediocre thing on the planet. So
EA is still deep in like not independent, but like on their publishing side of things, they have a greater deal of diversity, right? I'm trying to make sure I'm not letting history bleed in with the rest of my conception of them in the present day.
I think that for the purposes of our discussion, we're largely talking about EA's actual development houses,
right? Which is
and not great. Yeah. Not the best.
Not great.
But DICE is probably one of their most well-respected because they made all like the most recent Battlefield games. And like Battlefield 1, people love that game. I don't, but I tried to love it, but it was impossible. The single-player campaign is pretty good, for what it's worth. But you run into issues. But because of all of this, EA, who's had the license to make Star Wars games for a while, decided to resurrect Battlefront. And the first game went off with kind of a whimper. It was like somewhat popular for a week, and then everyone stopped playing it. It didn't gain much traction, and so they were like, "Well, the second one though, we'll do that one." Presumably the first one sold a lot of copies.
Of course it sold a lot of copies. It's EA. They can put a lot of copies around to be sold. But like, speaking with our usual 3/4 comedic disdain for the kind of audience that's normally targeted for like Battlefront and that sort of crowd, I'm always looking at all of these discussions from the outside. So, when Battlefront 1 was happening, I was mostly engaged with it from the perspective of like screenshots, videos, tech demos, which were gorgeous because it's EA and they have infinite money to make them gorgeous, full of things that we love and cherish in our lives, like Star Wars. And the game itself, I never was told about a mechanical hook that really brought me into the fold for that, and they did away with, as far as I know, of a lot of the weird, now very sort of quaint and antiquated features that made like the old Battlefront 2 PS2 games not different enough to warrant attention. I actually, as part of all of this, all the attention that surrounded Battlefront, made me go back and purchase for some pittance like the Battlefront 2 Steam copy.
Oh yeah,
just so I could try and reorient my memory of playing that game on my PlayStation 2 to what the actual experience was. And the real experience of that game is weird and clunky because it's
a PlayStation 2 game.
Yeah, because it's like a 15-year-old shooter from that era of shooters.
But a lot of people had fond memories of it.
And I still do. And I still do think that its campaign mode, while very board gamey and not the sort of thing that would be in vogue today, it has issues, but it was, I think it deserves a lot of the nostalgia that it sort of triggers.
Yeah.
So when they got rid of that one thing, that was enough for me to be a deal breaker, not just in terms of buying the game, but in terms of my attention around all of the discussion. So when Battlefront 2 came up, I was equally disengaged, which is the reason that I might be missing some like big thing about Battlefront 2 mechanically that just drew everyone to the fold. But to me, it just seemed like another cycle. It was just another way for them to try and use Star Wars iconography to make unfathomable amounts of money. And man, do they like money.
I mean, so be it. The issue came, and the reason why I think this is interesting to me is from the public reaction to the game itself. Basically, someone who had beta access to the game went online and said, "Hey guys, what's up? Been playing Battlefront for a while now, and without purchasing a thing, it would take like X number of hours. I think the cited number was about 40 of continuous play in order to unlock quote unquote heroes. And the heroes in the game are basically like, Left 4 Dead, how occasionally they'll be like, you're spawning in as the tank, and then you go in, you murder everybody as the big strong man. That is what the like heroes sort of act as, or maybe like the Titan drops and Titanfall is a better comparison.
Yeah,
but probably not. I'm not really sure. But
the reason we're not really sure is because the progression system in Battlefront 2, and I'm certain this contributed to the outrage, is almost like impenetrable. Like, I'm so sorry, Andy Kennick. They have some kind of combined system where instead of having a distinct progression meter like levels or something in Splatoon, because of course you have to compare it to Splatoon,
right? We don't know anything else.
Nothing else. And instead of a strict progression system, you just get access to a loot box system that has actual substantial differences in gameplay. It's not like an Overwatch style loot box system where it's cosmetic or just produces weird, interesting surprises. Like, loot boxes are critical to you unlocking new features of the game, and there's like 3 fucking currencies, and just
so they designed it like a mobile game, kind of.
I would argue that, like, it depends on the mobile game,
right?
Because, like, obviously that sort of design is in like most multiplayer games now.
Yeah.
And so, what are you gonna do about it? The thing is that the unlock system in Battlefront 2 is so unnecessarily baroque that they just like, no one seemed to know what was happening until someone did a lot of math and created graphs and like timelines. Yeah. Like, it seems intentionally vague in order to get you to sort of not think about it.
Well, that's the reason that these currencies exist in the first place.
Right.
And like all conversations about this, we're going to come up through this whole conversation, and I'm going to say stuff like this that's going to imply a general hostility to these practices that is a lot stronger than I think I personally initially mean it.
Yeah.
I even think it's hypothetically possible to do a progression system where the mechanical things you unlock are semi-random. Not necessarily literally a loot box because of all the connotations that has.
Right.
But I think you could do that in a way that was fun and entertaining. It's just this implementation of it is just really bad and really obtuse, which makes it easily comparable to all of the other ways that people try and make the cosmetic unlock systems and other currencies and like Andy said, mobile games obtuse. So that it's so hard to think about that you don't think about it as much, and you just go ahead and you purchase the item.
Right. You think, like, if I spend X amount of dollars on this, there's a chance that I will unlock the thing that I want, and therefore you spend money on it in order to make those two things meet. And while that is probably true, it's just, it makes this move from being a progression system in a game that is like, that wants you to grind into something that's kind of predatory, and that is the line for me. I think once something like incentivizes spending money over experiencing the game is the point where it's sort of, it enters this gray area. Like, where's the point where your enjoyment has to stop to get you to put cash down? And if it is before you open the game and go into a lobby, then I think you need to rethink what you do.
Who is the you in that sentence? Is that EA? Is that you as the player?
EA needs to rethink their progression system because what they did, their actual response to it was, and I actually haven't checked up on this since fucking midnight yesterday, because they said they were turning off the loot box system until December, or until January rather. But I don't know what that means, other than now it's just hard for everyone to unlock things.
You still have, because again, there's like 5 billion different currencies.
Yeah.
You still get the currency that you would normally get from just trying to play the game. And that currency is disproportionately associated with the amount of time you spend in the game, not of the results of the win or loss. So like winning a bunch doesn't let you get things significantly faster. And you can still just use that currency without any sort of like loot box middleman, if I remember correctly, to unlock the mechanically significant elements that you're looking for. Right. It's just like so many other loot box systems, when you get duplicates of items, that gets turned into a currency that you can also manipulate in these ways.
Right.
Yeah, it's ludicrously obtuse. And it's caused a backlash. Essentially, when all of these people got told very explicitly that you needed to wait 40 hours to pretend to be Darth Vader, it caused like the most anger I have ever seen on Reddit. A very angry place for like a period of like a solid month. Just real rage, and it was really unpleasant for me. It was sort of the sensation of like being in a kayak. And you're like going, shut up. And you're like,
I'm intrigued personally.
You're like going down like the West Coast, let's say, like in like a really like pleasant temperature, like a kelp field of some kind. And just no, I'm allowed to set this scene.
Kayaking down the coast.
Yeah, through a kelp field.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's sunny. And then here comes like Captain Douchebag in his speedboat, like pulling behind some other skier, just creating the most wake that he possibly can. And he starts like doing donuts and circles and shit.
In this metaphor, just to like clarify before we proceed further,
yes.
Captain Douchebag is EA, and the water around you is like public opinion.
The water around me is my sensation of the world.
Okay.
And the person who's on the boat
before.
It was calm before.
The Captain Douchebag on the boat is EA.
The
and the skier
is public opinion.
Is public opinion.
I'm not wedded to who is where on that stupid boat, but other people are on that boat, and a lot of them are mad.
Is the kayak Reddit, or is the kelp field Reddit?
Neither. The kayak and the kelp field and myself are all my contentment with the universe. It's all me and my happy bubble.
Is Reddit the ocean?
Because that's what Reddit's for, is happy bubbles that you build for yourself and never break under any circumstance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This just sounds like what it's like for me to be on Reddit all the time.
Oh, it's like a beautiful kelp field?
No.
Oh.
It's like there's a douchebag.
It's like there's a Captain Douchebag.
Yeah. And frickin' the waves just come, and now you have to stop focusing on like all the environment around you, and you have to like hold on to the sides of the kayak, and you just have to like make sure that you don't capsize under all these waves. Instead of just like appreciating the kelp field, it's like anywhere you go, there's gonna be a wake. You can't like paddle away. Wakes travel at like 360 degrees away from the boat. If you're in the water, then you're gonna get hit by the wake, and you're not gonna be able to experience all the fun things that you are in the water to enjoy. And that's how I felt when all of that went down, because everywhere I went, it was just jokes about some weird one-off thing that one of the designers said related to the loot box system.
Right, it was designed to...
A kelp field actually be kind of dingy and gross.
No, I've actually been...
And like your oar would get stuck in the kelp.
I mean, no, you can use the kelp to like grab and pull yourself. I've been in like a...
Oh. Okay.
It's very pretty.
Got a kelp field.
On the
Are we
West
talking
Coast.
in like a tropical environment here?
No, we're the West Coast.
Yeah, we're talking
about say no.
You did say the West Coast.
Come on, keep up with the metaphor.
Every time I've ever seen kelp in the ocean, it's been like in like goopy blobs just kind of floating there. It is not alive and growing.
Oh no, there's like cool kelp. There's actual
like
nice
actual kelp.
Yeah,
Okay.
they have like these huge fucking stalks that I'm like, this is the kind that I'm picturing. They have like these like cool bamboo-ish stalks that have like leaves at the top.
Okay.
And they're so strong you can just like grab the stalks and you can just like pull yourself around. Because they are just firmly attached to something at the bottom of the water. I don't know. I can't see that far.
Okay.
I'm sure they're having a good time.
So I think that the point here Our overall opinion on the whole thing is largely just that you can do whatever you want when you make a game, but if you're making a game where the biggest draw is that you can play as Darth Vader, and then you make people wait a long time to play as Darth Vader, you probably deserve to have people not buy or like your game.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm just really scared at how extreme a lot of the backlash has gotten. Like the kind of waves that are forming in this water to, never let this metaphor ever die for the rest of my life.
I mean, I wouldn't be that concerned. Like, everyone sort of... I mean, while it's still a persistent joke, I don't think that the vitriol has died down.
There has been...
Which is actually more concerning to me. Like, I feel like if anyone's going to make an impact on something, there needs to be kind of a concerted, long-term effort.
Agreed.
It can't just die off immediately. So get more angry, everyone. Make JJ feel worse.
No. Because they're going so much further than... People are going so much further than where their outrage needs to be targeted. Where their outrage needs to be targeted is the absolutely atrocious progression system that exists in this game. Like so many other times when people bring up microtransactions in an online setting, my problem with it is how it impacts the base game. And this is a very easy example where we can point to where the game has been built around the microtransaction system in a way that's actively harmful to the experience of playing the game.
Right.
But there are people, like, it's not like a common talking point where people want to try and get like loot box systems in video games criminalized as a form of gambling for children.
Right.
Like,
well, gambling generally is illegal in most states. So.
Yeah, or at least regulated. And it goes, and this is going to sound like the dumbest thing, but like, I want my Overwatch loot boxes.
Right, yeah.
I think there are ways you could implement on these systems that are not to the detriment of anyone, of ways that are actually make it fun. And I understand the hilarious potential bias I have here as someone who loves and plays Magic the Gathering.
Right.
I'm terrified that people are throwing out the baby with the bathwater here by just continuing to flare up their like hostility to microtransaction systems generally, instead of being hostile to badly designed games.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, but like this is one of those things that I've been thinking about for a while in games development, where it seems like there's a slight failure of capitalism here, like in the intended purpose, because
the intended purpose of capitalism. Okay,
right. Yeah. This is what I'm talking about. The intended, like the ideal intended purpose of capitalism that games companies like EA are built on, is the idea that if you make a game that people like, they buy the game.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like the basic, the most basic economic principle that you could possibly form a thing on. But like, if people buy your game and it has something shitty in it, but it isn't like you're not buying the shitty thing, you're buying the whole game that contains the shitty thing, it's really difficult to kind of get that message across, because like their microtransaction thing was so well publicized that many people did not purchase the game because of it.
Yes.
But there are terrible game design decisions that are made in lots of games that you wouldn't go like, this game has a quest where you have to follow a guy who moves slightly slower than you do for a long period of time. I'm not buying that game. That whole game is dead to me because of this one instance of a weird thing. So you have to be able to tell someone, hey, this thing sucks, don't do it. No one likes it. But I liked the game overall, so keep making that game.
I feel like the reaction that people had to this and the reaction that EA showed in response shows that they are able to distinguish those things, because on the other somewhere, not necessarily in the boardrooms, not necessarily on the publisher side where like the really hard number crunching economic decisions get made, but somewhere in EA are people who legitimately care about these problems, and just sinking my ship further in like my perspective to all these issues. Do you know that like the one response, the now like most downvoted comment in Reddit history?
Yeah,
I don't think that's a bad answer to his question. Specifically for Andy's case,
yeah,
one guy just straight up said, like, we did all the number crunching. It takes like 40 hours to play as Darth Vader once. This is kind of ridiculous. And while mentioning all sorts of other mechanical unlocks, and the comment that during like an actual response actually from one of the developers of the game was like, we have these systems in place in order to give players a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment as they unlock things. And it was like a paragraph long and like roughly like that. And this was like the spark that caused all of the rage in the universe.
Yeah.
That is, I think that's why progression systems exist. Lots of people, like, the immediate response to a lot of that outrage was like, when you buy a sandwich, like, you don't have to fucking wait 40 minutes for it, and that's because you're not buying the experience of acquiring the sandwich.
Correct.
When you play a video game, you are buying the experience of acquiring and growing a thing. That's what RPGs generally are about. Just because this is a shitty version of it doesn't mean the concept of progression systems is bad. I'm just really terrified that people are going to take the wrong lessons from this horrifying shit that was all perpetuated partially by EA, partially by a fan reaction to it. People are mean.
Yeah, people, and not only that, but like, public opinion's super easy to get like swept up in as well.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people will, without really thinking about it, join in on the bandwagon because they read this one piece of evidence and it seems like this is the thing to be mad about. And yeah, I'm sure the informed people here know what the issues are and are not just going along with hate speech. That's not the right word. It is hateful speech toward EA for making their game the way that they did.
Because one of the devs in this Battlefront 2 situation made some kind of like snide Twitter comment that was like really unprofessional. Like, you guys are all armchair developers for like not speaking about these things. Which, while an asshole thing to say, I think is partially valid for the same reason that pointing out that this is a progression system is partially valid.
Right.
But that guy's got like 7 death threats and like 130 other. What the? Oh. Of course, my grandma is calling me in the middle of the podcast. Do we want the grandma on the podcast?
Yes.
I mean, you can answer her
Okay.
if you'd like.
Hello? Yes? Oh, sorry? It might be because I'm currently recording a podcast. It's like a radio show, but on the internet instead of on the radio. Damn. I was hoping I was going to get more of an opportunity to explain what a podcast was.
You had the perfect explanation of what a podcast was for an old person.
Thank you.
That's
Like
true,
you had
yeah.
thought about it beforehand.
Okay, so as not to get sort of tangled up in the, I guess, kelp in this scenario, we should probably move off of it to, for what it's worth, the public opinion of this game has apparently swayed some people, considering a dude who works in a Walmart in West Virginia attempted to dissuade me from buying a copy of Battlefront for my brother. I was like, okay, I'll just ruin his Christmas because you're an angry guy. Anyway, see you later. And let's move on to something else in the realm of things Andy won't know anything about.
I've really got to save the negativity.
I didn't think we would talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
I did not study for the test.
It was
I was unprepared.
right. Any discussion of 2017 and video games is going to eventually result in a conversation about Battlefront 2.
Indeed. All right. That's one of the 2 things in the no talk list. And then
I'm just going to highlight all the things that I don't care about.
Yep.
Well, I hope that the second thing in your no talk list is not PUBG.
No.
Because if we're talking about online multiplayer games, I feel like one of the things that I wanted to discuss was what a crazy good year for Twitch this is. Like the company Twitch, I mean. And I'm sure people who enjoy like consuming that content are also having a pretty good time. Mm-hmm. But there's been this weird sort of uptick in like games that are actually being adopted as like popular Twitch games. So obviously League of Legends, Dota 2 aren't going anywhere. They're still like the most popular esport games in the whole fucking world. Mm-hmm. And games that I'm just so bad at that I can't participate. And I feel like that's going to spread to the new hotness, which is PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. And sort of this like I think there are at least 2 very popular Battlegrounds games between PUBG and Fortnite. And this whole trend has taken me so by surprise. And I don't know how you guys feel about these types of games. Like, they're probably not interested and don't like them.
Oh, I like them conceptually a lot. I feel like, I forget if I've had this conversation with you before on or off mic, but my favorite thing about like the generic experience of playing PUBG is how easily it gives other people an understanding of the horrors of war. Because this is like, because I've seen lots of people play this, even though I've never purchased the game myself. And the thing that people latch onto about PUBG, in my experience, other than just the hilarious silliness that exists in lots of online multiplayer games, like people pranking and being hilarious, is the intense paranoia that you get because of the fragility of your own life.
Right.
It feels to me watching someone play PUBG the way I always felt when I was younger playing paintball, of that same like constant, absolute silent tension where like death is around every single corner and every decision could be like your instantaneous end. Like that is something that I feel like it really is imparting a great lesson onto today's youth through PUBG.
Right. I think
what an optimistic take.
I played my first ever round of PUBG like 3 days ago, and I won. No, I died first. I was utterly atrocious at it, as I expected, but that's, I guess, the thing that you just expect from this type of a game. And it is super interesting. The thing that I love about them as like a concept is the like shrinking area, like as a solution to what if you just put a bunch of people on an island. It's like they would go camp in a bush for an hour. You just have to shrink it and actually force the conflict. And the other thing that I love about it is that it makes all of the people who I already hate on the internet, but who just yell things indiscriminately, without thinking about what they're saying, or just like cannot piece together like a sentence that makes any sense, who I run into all the time online, are now literally all your enemy. So you can take the whole game and just find some dude who said a dumb thing and be like, this is for the dumb thing. Shoot him in the face.
I don't understand why this wasn't an experience you couldn't already have in like Halo.
Well, in Halo, I didn't have match chat on. Are you an insane person? My go-to experience for this kind of thing is in Overwatch.
Oh, okay.
Because if you have somebody who's just like a complete idiot on your team, it is difficult to like just ignore them for the whole match.
And if even if they're on the enemy team, you can't like do any sort of like approximate lone wolf things in Overwatch. You can't target them specifically as an individual.
Because I'm not hurting anyone else by my badness in PUBG, but I can hurt one person with like a crazy vengeful strike on them.
And that is, of course, the like a mature, appropriate response to being outraged in a video game is vengeful strikes of sorts.
As long as I come off as polite but vengeful, that's what I'm going for.
Like a British Punisher?
Exactly.
Okay.
In fact, I'm going to make my PUBG name.
No, like a Canadian Punisher.
Like. All right.
I guess.
Yeah?
Oh no! I was just going to ask whether or not Canadians are racist. Please continue.
I'm sure there are racist Canadians.
Right, but I mean, if we generalize them as a group, are they?
Oh, then yes. Well, no, it's national. No, that's.
I don't think Canadians think that Canada's the. Well, I mean, I'm sure that's not. This is neither here nor there, or anywhere. Nor would I have it in
Canada.
a book.
It's Canadian, clearly.
It is
whatever it is. Whatever the answer to this question is, it's in Canada.
I don't think that there's a sociologist you could talk to who would be like, I think Canadians are racist generally. So I think that's going to be a non-starter.
All right, you answered my question. Thank you.
No. Either way, The only other thing that I wanted to talk about in the realm of esports probably won't be talked about, and that's Overwatch League. And the fact that I'm really amazed by how quickly everyone has gone from talking about Overwatch as a video game to talking about it like it was football. And it is the craziest thing in the world to me. Because, like, people that I watched before, because they told me things about Overwatch, immediately switched to the Sports Center thing, where they're just like, oh, we're talking about the preseason game between Seoul Dynasty and the Houston Outlaws. It looks like they've got some kind of their B-stringers on this match, and they just straight go into it the same way that I feel when I watch, like, a Sports Center show, and it's like, it's fascinating.
Are you talking about fascinating in like a sociological sense, or fascinating because you really like the personalities that exist in the Overwatch esports scene?
Weirdly, both.
Huh.
But yeah, I mean, obviously I'm like predisposed to absolutely love all of this like extraneous Overwatch coverage. So I've just been consuming it all day like an idiot for the last like 4 weeks. And I'm super excited for the first season to start, but that's just it, really.
Good. I am a little bit terrified of the day in which extremely popular video games will be predominantly talked about like football, because then I will feel closer to football, and that scares me.
Okay. Shall we talk about something else?
Oh my god, we went through a whole like comparison about football when talking about Overwatch esports and Twitch, and we never pointed out that you can literally watch football on Twitch now.
Oh yeah, that is a thing.
Why?
I don't know. The NFL has just an agreement with Twitch, and you can just live stream games.
That is so weird.
It is extremely weird.
And also like the last remaining reason to have cable, so...
Oh yeah, good point. Poor
Yeah.
cable. Man.
Poor cable. No one has ever said that not in the last year. This is a video games year in review. We're not going to talk about net neutrality.
No. That was actually the other thing on my don't talk about it list, was how net neutrality relates to video games, because I have no idea, because no one does, because it's legislation and it's unfathomably complicated.
I don't think it's that complicated, but...
No. It's the last thing on the list. Let me keep this.
Okay, alright, we won't talk about it, but...
Your disagreement is noted.
Mm-hmm.
Stamp.
So what is on the do talk list?
For me?
Is it Animal Crossing Pocket Camp? Is that...
No. I guess when talking about the esports space, we could continue to exclude Andy universally and just mention to the world. Are we allowed contractually as a video game podcast to talk about MTG Arena? Does that qualify or not?
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what? The Magic the Gathering Arena game? Magic is making like a Hearthstone competitor, and by Hearthstone I mean Hearthstone, because I'm not an uneducated piece of shit. Yeah, they opened up like closed beta access to essentially their version of Hearthstone, and it seems to be good. Like unbelievably, it seems to be good. Not unbelievably good. Like, how on earth is this good? Everything seems to point to this being bad.
Considering Wizards' previous history with doing things in the game space, yeah. I guess people liked the duels games, but they are intentionally like very specifically designed in that way.
Yeah. But it seems like very soon we're going to have the possibility of drafting from home with a user interface that is not unbelievable garbage, and that I don't know what's going to happen to me after that becomes available.
Yeah. Neither will we. We probably won't see you ever again.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I didn't think it was possible for you to move from something I know nothing about to something I know less about to something I know even less about.
You can't call it out, because that was supposed to be the trend. I was going to see how many D players I could go. I mean, I do have on here more complaints about Fire Emblem Fates, if you really...
I feel like that... I think my depiction, like my mental image of how this was going to go, was not going to be about like very specific niche games that 12 people have played.
Well, I did specifically call out that we shouldn't talk about very specific niche things, and then wrote down lots of things about Fire Emblem games. So
Very niche things.
I have one. Okay, if we're banning niche discussion topics, I have to first get out, because this is definitely related to the gaming space, that video games created the best joke in human history.
Oh, good. I'm sure this is going to be relevant, and we'll go down in history as maybe the most important thing that happened in 2017. Go on.
I agree. So, Andy.
Yes, lay it on me.
Knock, knock.
Hey, Gabe Newell. I'm writing the joke right now.
Your one-upsmanship is impressive. Does that count as a knock-knock joke in like a real sense or a meta sense?
That was a meta. Well, it was a joke about jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't resist. Go
Solid. So, in addition to our prior Twitch discussions,
Yes.
Jeff Kaplan, lead developer of Overwatch, recently did a 10-hour stream that was partially faked, to my great sadness, of him sitting by like a Yule log. Are you aware of like the Yule log trend?
No.
Okay.
Oh, he is extremely aware.
Okay. So
He's just talking about like what I keep doing to you by putting on the Yule log on Netflix.
Okay. That's a trend.
that is a trend. It has existed for many a year. There used to be like
I don't think that makes it a trend. I think it's the opposite of a trend. It's an established tradition.
Yes.
Sure. So there was this thing that people used to do in the olden days, where you would gather, if you didn't have a fireplace because you were poor and meaningless, you just gathered around a television representation of a fireplace.
Right. I think it's not poor. I think it means that you live now
What did I say?
and not in the past.
I think it would be cheaper to get firewood and light it on fire than
Then
to buy
have
a
a TV.
TV.
No. I'm not saying it's cheaper than the fire. I'm saying it's cheaper than the fireplace, the place where the fire goes.
Okay.
Anyone can build a campfire in their living room if they so desire, but it's a very bad decision.
Okay.
All right. So for 10 hours straight, of ambiguous length, at least some of it was faked and looped, the lead developer of Overwatch sat in complete stone silence for 10 hours on a Twitch stream, just beside the like burning log, and like in like a nice chair, and he like ate cookies every now and again. But that's not the world's best joke.
Right.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah, the world's best
That's not
joke.
very
That's like the second best joke.
The world's best joke was contained within this.
Okay.
In which at roughly like the 3-hour mark of continuous perfect silence of this man staring at a camera, but in like a Christmas themed room, from like top off screen, a like boom mic comes down like it fell and like bops him on top of the head, and he like joggles a little bit, and the boom mic goes up and away. And that is the best joke in human
not
history.
even a joke.
It is absolutely a joke. And do you know why it's a joke?
Because it was a scripted thing.
Because it implies that there is a man off camera for 10 continuous hours holding a boom mic
Right.
for a stone silent Jeff Kaplan.
It could have. Wasn't necessarily being held. It could have been like rigged up.
I don't think that it was rigged up, nor was it being held.
I'm
I
sure
think
there's-
someone carried a microphone into
And
the
then
studio,
dropped it.
Of course.
bopped him, and
Right,
then
because
walked
it would
up.
be
Right.
funny.
But the
Right.
implication of the universe they're trying to build here with this joke suggests that there was a man sitting there with a boom mic for 10 continuous hours waiting for Jeff Kaplan to speak anything. Which, of course, he never will. But the boom mic man will stand anyway.
Yeah.
Vigilant, as always, for the chance to learn some wisdom.
I like Chad's joke better.
We'll see
The
who
meta
history
knock
remembers.
2018 is already out to a better start.
Yeah, 2018, the year of meta knock-knock jokes. Let's hope that never transpires.
No clip hosts be warned. In the future, like, sociologists will come back to this moment.
When we're replaced with new hosts
Correct.
in
And-
season 5.
And we'll see where the world lands on this joke. I'm willing to stake my reputation on this joke perpetuating, maybe as long as the human race
it is
also
funny.
perpetuates.
Yeah, I won't deny that.
Yeah, I feel like we would need to make people more aware of it, which I guess we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
What else we got?
Andy, maybe you should be allowed to speak ever about anything.
Nah.
Okay.
All right. So in order for Andy to speak about something, one thing that we assuredly can talk about. So we didn't do a top games list this year, and as I described in text form to these guys, the reason why I didn't want to do a repeat of last year's what are our favorite games is because our favorite games would just end up being some combination of Mario, Splatoon, Zelda. For me, in that order, probably, going straight up. And the big thing here is the release of the Nintendo Switch, which is kind of a big thing for Nintendo that happened in 2017. Mm-hmm. Ergo, we should talk about it.
And not just a critically big thing, either. This is something that I was curious about, that numbers are a little bit scant on, but... in classic petty console wars fashion, they have been seemingly rewarded by the market for their, enormous, critically successful year, both from a software and hardware standpoint, where they're, about on track to where the PS4 was on its day. So they're roughly selling at the same rate, historically speaking, if you adjust the timelines.
Right.
And Microsoft's being very close to the chest about the Xbox, which says some things about that.
Yeah.
It might have something to do with the fact that they made an Xbox One X. I want to personally blame them for that decision.
I think there's also, isn't there an Xbox One X and an Xbox One S?
Yes, there's also an S.
Yeah. So they made this is actually the point why I think the Switch is a big deal, because it came out at such a good time, because the thing right before it, we had the PlayStation 4 Pro, and then after it, we had the One X and S and the XS
and the One Xbox, One Xbox.
Exactly.
Yeah,
is a problem because both of those. While they are essentially the same product fighting for the same market share, appear to be for a very small section of their audience. And it seems weird that they both ended up... I feel like they got caught up in the idea of making sure that they were on the same page technologically, where instead of, what people actually wanted from them. Mm-hmm. Which I'm honestly not even sure. Bloodborne 2, for me? That's about it.
It was Star Wars Battlefront 2.
That's true, yeah.
But we see how that went.
Mm-hmm. So the Switch comes out and is just a new console. Nintendo for a while has been kind of off the regular cycle, and it did phenomenally well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't think I can get online without people posting Switch is selling well. People are always putting reports that the Switch is still selling good, right? Because at first it was people didn't know if it was going to be successful, and so you would see posts like that. Yeah. But they're still being posted, and people will be "Oh, it's already about to outsell the Wii U," etc.
Well, because we were talking about Nintendo consoles, you always need that reassurance that things are actually going well, because you can just kind of assume, in most other cases, unless you're Sony's handheld console, that things are going fine, even if they're not going as fine as they could. But with the Nintendo consoles, there's always the chance, because of the variability, that it could just be a catastrophic failure in Wii U-like ways. But so you have all of the news in order to try and people are more interested in it because there's more chance of it being different.
Right.
And it is luckily different than the Wii U this time, and has video games that are good.
Yeah, I think that Zelda was a real big push, even though they released it on the Wii U at the same time.
Right.
All those people who didn't buy a Wii U suddenly were presented with this choice, if I want to play this game, do I buy a new console, the Switch, or do I buy the Wii U? Apparently the last thing I would ever want to own. So even though you would save probably around $100 purchasing the old console, most people just decided to get the new one. Mm-hmm. Probably a smart decision.
And to circle around like what we talked about at the beginning, I think Nintendo's like strong presence this year might be the reason why people are talking about 2017 like it's one of the best years in gaming ever.
Yeah.
Well, you remove Nintendo from the equation, and what do you have? Like Nier Automata, didn't Horizon Zero Dawn come out this year?
Yep. PUBG.
PUBG.
None of us have played extensively.
Yeah.
But it is like the most popular game that came out this year.
Didn't Neo come out this year?
I think it was 2016.
Persona 5.
Oh, no,
Persona 5 came out this year.
Neo did come out this year, but it wasn't received all that well.
And I'd like to point out that with the exception, probably notably, of like Horizon Zero Dawn, a lot of the games that are being listed among this giant trend of like fantastic video games is a list of very weird experimental games that still manage to maintain their quality despite a lot of their niche or experimental qualities.
Right.
And that bodes well for me. It bodes very poorly for EA, like many other things in life. But it bodes well for video games generally, and for how many things are gonna, be better on the Switch when they come to the Switch. It'd be perfect for the Switch.
It would be perfect.
For the Switch.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that are perfect for the Switch,
Everything.
Video games.
See, here's the part where I start to run into a whole thing. The Switch had so of the games that were being like sort of ported to the Switch, which is the thing that has just been kind of happening over the course of the year as people try and get in on this new market that's kind of sprung up. The one of them that I was legitimately kind of excited about was Doom. As like long-time listeners know, I fucking love the 2016 Doom. I think it's a great game. And I picked it up, and it basically is garbage. Like,
what?
Like, you can't, on the Switch, it's just bad.
Why? No.
Yeah. So, I think it has something to do with it being potentially kind of a hasty port. The other possibility is that the Switch just literally can't handle the amount of things that it wants to put on screen. And so the end result, because it's a console game, it has sort of set graphical settings. You can't make it run better either. And so that a little bit concerns me that year and a half old game can't run on the Switch. Obviously, Nintendo understands it. Like, as we talked about before, Mario Odyssey still looked really good.
Yeah.
Zelda had some kind of notable performance issues, particularly noted when it came out.
At launch, yeah.
I mean, they still exist, though.
Yeah, they exist, but they've been mitigated, and it's universal as a description to any piece of hardware that later into the life cycle you get, the more that these issues start to degrade. And I don't think that the issues that the Switch have had on a technological front have been really even discussed that much outside of Breath of the Wild specific issues.
Right.
And that makes me, if this is as bad as it's going to get technologically, that's something I'm happy about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally speaking, I'm fine as long as people are making concessions for it. But, I don't know. I feel like people probably shouldn't rush to the Switch with things that are going to operate on it.
Yeah, like, watching you play it, I was kind of surprised at the quality of the port, especially coming from Bethesda, right?
Yeah.
Can it play Skyrim, though? How's Skyrim on the Switch?
I didn't get it.
I've heard that Skyrim runs, like, perfectly on Switch. But, I mean, that's, like...
2012? Like a 6-year-old game?
It's a 6-year-old game, but...
Yeah, I think it's 2011, actually. It's a 7-year-old game.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's... Yeah, like, like, there will be, like, jarring absences of just sound and music.
Whoa.
And, like, some of the textures look like total ass.
Yeah. It's
like,
not
yeah,
pretty.
the amount of corners it has to cut to run on the Switch is, like, a lot. it's a circle, man.
Skyrim does have VR controls on the Switch, which is kind of an interesting situation.
The motion controls?
Yeah, you can use the Joy-Cons as your sword and shield.
Does the, like, weird Switch hypersensitive rumble feedback play in? Can you, like, feel the difference between, like, a two-handed battle axe?
I don't
I
own
feel
the
like
game.
that is a feature that only like weird party games and first party Nintendo games are going to use.
Oh, so like the Kinect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like,
Even first-party Nintendo games haven't really used
no,
it.
yeah, I was going to say because my cousin, like, who's like 12, had 1-2 Switch, and I played it over Christmas. And like it's pretty impressive, like the HD Rumble, you know, like from what I would have expected anyway. Mm-hmm. And like none of the games I've played have been anything like that, you know. And like Mario and Zelda don't have anything with HD Rumble,
Right.
Because how could you possibly use that in an engaging way?
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you're going to use it in just an immersive way instead of an engaging way, why not just use those resources elsewhere? Mm-hmm. Especially if it's a weird thing that generally, like Rumble Designer, I don't think is anyone that has there's not a lot of people currently on staff
I'm a
for
Rumble
Design.
specialist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is because it's a piece of hardware that's sort of like a new technology, or at least new-ish.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a bit before people try and do things. Because the possibility space for it is pretty cool.
Yeah, like I could see like a snipper clip style like
Indie
game that like uses it really creatively.
I'm still pulling from my trauma center surgery simulator where it simulates the feel
that's
of
the one.
Yeah.
of like
a trauma
organs.
center game
With
Yeah.
both of
with the
the...
HD Rumble would be great.
You could like feel the organs.
Exactly, it'd be gross as hell.
Take note, Atlas.
Yeah.
They're doing whatever. Oh man,
They're porting Catherine or whatever,
yeah.
or remaking it or whatever.
But we can't. But that's not technically within the realm
That's
of
true.
2017.
Can't talk about it.
Yeah,
Sure, yeah.
but it is happening, and it is weird, and I'll be interested in how that goes, like many other things. Crap.
Crap.
So the plot of Half-Life 3 got released.
That's true, yeah.
Wasn't it Half-Life 2 Episode 3 that got leaked?
I don't know.
I actually thought I heard that.
Does it matter? We got more Half-Life
No,
from
I
the
mean-
grave.
I've never played Half-Life.
We knew this. Thank you for releasing the... Oh, wait, no, it's back. It's down. Darth Vader has no stake in whether or not somebody had played...
Half-Life.
Yeah.
I was trying to impart not just shock, but transfer it into like a menacing aura. So without words, I could communicate to him both that I was disappointed.
I
and
feel like
surprised
anybody
and the
who's
murder.
listened to this podcast would not be surprised that I haven't played Half-Life.
Yeah, it's fair.
And no, but we also both knew it. What I thought was actually happening there was you were gasping initially, and then when I told you that you already knew that was you deflating.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
so many levels.
Either
Oh.
way, I believe because it was named Epistle 3, like that's what he titled the blog
Yep.
when he put it out. Sounds to me like it's Episode 3 as opposed to Half-Life 3 itself, which makes sense because when they initially put out Half-Life 2 episodes 1 and 2, their intent was to make a third episode before a Half-Life 3, if that was even in the cards.
Yeah.
Like realistically, we don't actually know if there was ever going to be a Half-Life 3 from the outset. Either way, yeah, the plot was leaked online, and
I've heard that it's good.
I mean,
Like, I heard... I don't remember what now, because it happened, like, at the beginning of the year, didn't it?
It did. It was.
Yeah, because I heard somebody talk about it, and, like, they seemed like they thought the plot was actually, like, really cool.
well, that's one of the big boons that Valve has had generally in the games industry is that they have a staff of really good writers, and Eric Wolpa, who went on to... He did, I believe, the story for Portal. I don't know if he was involved with Portal 2. I'm not like a Valve historian, but and Mark Laidlaw, who is the one who actually leaked that thing, are pretty lauded in the industry as being like really good, particularly at the Half-Life style sort of storytelling through a world. Like they sort of explain, like nobody sits down and like gives you a cutscene. It's always sort of as you go through an area,
Environmental storytelling.
you figure things out. Yeah, through both dialogue and the environmental storytelling. So, yeah, it is good, and it sucks that the fact that he released it to me reads as a we just put all of this into the garbage can. It's gone forever.
Or as like a desperate plea, like hoping that people would like think it was so great and it would blow up, and they'd be like, "Oh, look, there's interest in Half-Life."
I don't think anyone ever denied that there was interest in Half-Life.
Yeah, but
I mean, it's waning. Like, it's not as strong as it was, I don't
Yeah.
know, 5 years ago.
What
10
happens
years
is
ago?
when you choke someone,
It's-
you
yeah.
like throw them into space and
Yeah.
they can't
as
breathe.
someone who's never played Half-Life, like I find the fact that Valve like won't release or make Half-Life 3 after like it's been such a meme for
Right.
so long, like to be super fascinating.
I think this is something
Well, they've
that...
kind of just like stopped making games, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's just kind of weird because everybody loved all their games. It seemed like.
This reads to me like a classic circumstance of people not having the necessary context to understand their decisions.
Oh, I definitely don't.
Yeah, like like with so many of these like weird high tier business decisions, I'm sure if I sat down with like 10 people in a boardroom, that they could in like an hour sell me on why they shouldn't be making video games anymore, and not just in like the cold calculating numbers of capitalism, which are some great icy numbers, but also because from like a consumer service perspective, I think it's easy to make the argument that the road that Valve has gone down is a road that might be better for everyone. I think the amount of good that Steam blowing up as a platform has given the industry is pretty immense. And it's hard for me to even imagine what my gaming life would be like over the last decade without Steam being the way that I get into PC games as a platform.
But why does like the quality of Steam like have to come at the expense of games development?
Because it literally comes at the expense, like as in the money spent
Right.
on it.
I just feel I don't know.
Again, this
I'm
is
sure that
speculative.
you're correct, but
Yeah.
it just seems like they would have the money to also like develop games.
Yeah. The
Given
fact
how
that
like ludicrously successful they are as a company.
the fact that Valve has ceased making games entirely has been it like doesn't fully mesh with this, but the argument that I've always heard for them not releasing a Half-Life sequel that I think sort of makes sense is that it's been so long that the damage to the company of a bad Half-Life game or even a good Half-Life game that like isn't transcendent in some way would be like greater than them just not ever making it. But the fact they haven't made anything makes you go like, does Valve like have developers on staff anymore?
They've been on vacation.
Yeah. They were
For,
like, once the
like,
Half-Life
10
2 money
years.
stops coming in, we'll come back. How's it going? It's like, pipe's still open. All right.
Don't close that valve.
Yeah, exactly. You picked up what I was putting down.
Can I complain about Fire Emblem Fates yet?
No.
Okay, that's fair. Can I, instead of doing that as a refrain of the constant joke that I've been trying to push this episode, can I instead talk about how Fire Emblem as a brand seems to be diverging into two separate, like, existent timelines, and I'm super interested about it?
Can you work Fire Emblem Fates into that somehow?
Possibly, but not by timelines. I want to be clear here. I don't mean lore timelines. Timelines may have been a bad comparison. I mean like two different streams of games in the real world that exist.
Oh, no,
now.
I understood that, but can you work the Fire Emblem Fates discussion into this conversation?
Yes.
All right, I greenlight that. Let's do it.
Are you? If you in any way include that, you're going to imply for the rest of time that your generalized approval is on-demand bilges?
Should we take a break first? Or are we just fucking the break today?
All right, and then when we come back, we're talking about Fire Emblem.
Oh, it's the old lady from Fire Emblem again.
Oh, that's how I'm coming back. Welcome back to the podcast. It's the old woman from Fire Emblem again, and I sense a storm a-coming. A storm of JJ's rage.
Maybe if we're both just silent
It's
and
a
we let this
shortcut
die.
to rage.
It's not rage. It's not rage. Just because I constantly joke about how much I hate Fates and want to pretend that my rage is undying doesn't mean it's actually undying. It's just as a, from a meta joke level, will always be undying.
I just had to use that phrase because the one thing that I ever said in the old lady voice was that rain was coming, because that's the one thing I ever heard her say in Fire Emblem.
Mm-hmm.
And by heard, I mean read. That voice is entirely invented.
Because there's no voice acting on a Game Boy Advance game.
Yeah.
You
so
jerk.
it ended up being perfect for this scenario. Also, apologies to anyone who hasn't listened to the Fire Emblem episode or the first year blooper video to know that that's my Fire Emblem old lady voice.
The thing that has truly lived on to define the series in your eyes.
It's like the only persistent joke we have, and it's not even that persistent.
Oh, did we have plenty of persistent
Yeah, we had
jokes?
some persistent jokes.
Don't make
that
fun
we
of
have
our
since
memes.
Given up on. Okay, so
2018, we have to give up on it.
true.
So Fire Emblem as a series. Let's
Yep.
hear it.
We have moved on to a point now where it appears, I don't know, I assume it's too recent for them to have incorporated a lot of the post-Fates discussion, but it seems that they're channeling off some of their like whorishly acquired money through other partnership deals with random other games like Shin Megami Tensei and apparently now Dynasty Warriors in mobile games. And they're using some of it, they not just to exploit terrible trends that I hate in the world to make themselves more money, but they're using it to create revamped versions of their older games. As many of you are probably aware, if you care, of Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia, a terrible name.
Use it like any name, any game that has the word shadows in the title. Like, oh wait, no wait.
Gale of
It
Darkness.
was Gale of Darkness.
XD Gale of Darkness.
Right, yeah.
It's the same tone. It's a very bad name.
Right.
But
You don't like subtitles.
it is a bad name for a good game that is a remake of the second ever Fire Emblem game for the NES, which I had never played. And it is just a relatively normal Fire Emblem game with some weird mechanical changes and iterations that
And
are
amiibo functionality.
and amiibo functionality.
Most important.
But the nitty-gritty that doesn't matter. What matters is that the echoes in that title, everyone's treating it as if it like Echoes is like the proper name for the game in the same way that you had like Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn or Awakening and all that stuff. Because people are used to talking about like that. But it seems that Echoes is now going to be like a title that they apply to further remakes of their old games.
Kind of like how A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi are now called the Star Wars Legends films.
Similar. I don't think... if they made remakes of them and
Right,
called
yeah.
them the Legends, yeah.
But it's like a branding thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And as longtime listeners of the podcast will know, the prospect of them remaking any of the games that I have played in a modern sensibility and style, it would essentially become like the Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver of my life. Whatever, Andy Koenig. And I'm very excited about this development because it means essentially that I will soon be able to have, and I assume a lot of people like me, the best of both worlds, where Fire Emblem gets to exist with ludicrous production values, and it actually gets to exist like that without selling itself out in all qualities. I just get to ignore like the mobile game and the Dynasty Warriors IP crossover and lots of other terrible ideas that create terrible games.
Well, that's the trick with the, what is it called? Like Heroes or something?
The mobile game?
Oh, is that Heroes?
That's Heroes.
What's the Dynasty one? Dynasty
Warriors.
Warriors. Okay. Oh yeah, because it's like Hyrule Warriors.
Right.
It's
And
not
it's like
actually an
Dynasty
IP.
Warriors.
Right. It's not actually an IP crossover. It's just like Fire Emblem skin on a Dynasty Warriors game.
Yeah.
I mean, they actually do take something like I know the Fire Emblem Warriors game has like elements from Fire Emblem, like the being best friends system and the and like permadeath.
And they have map crossover control. I know this because I did, of course, look into this game before immediately dismissing it.
Realistically, it seems like a fun game.
Are you really? This will be the tangent that we hit here. Are you? When was the last time anyone you know has played a Dynasty Warriors game, including yourself?
The last time that anyone, I know people who have played Hyrule Warriors.
That counts. That counts.
Okay, it counts.
Yeah.
But the last one that I played, and the last time that I felt like it was relevant enough that I think I knew people who had also played it was like 4? Like Dynasty Warriors 4?
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was on the PlayStation 2.
Yes.
I've never played Dynasty Warriors, nor was I ever actively aware that people I knew were playing it.
Because they were all playing it generally alone in their homes.
Yes.
Because Dynasty Warriors, at least mechanically in my eyes, has always been literally like a PS2 era bit to fill time, like to replace human loneliness with human repetition. It is a mechanic set that is just buried real deep in like early PS2 levels of technology and interaction in my mind.
Yeah, what's funny to me is that if you reskinned a Dynasty Warriors game and called it Grass Cutting Simulator, I feel like it would work exactly the same way.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah, like you were just a guy with like with a scythe. And you just did a spin move and cut a bunch of grass.
I feel kind of similarly. They've always seemed super uninteresting to me, but the reskinning of them as Nintendo games has made me kind of feel like,
I'm not surprised.
I might play that.
Perfect for the Switch.
Yeah, perfect for the Switch. But no, I think they were really smart releasing it so early in the Switch's life, because I feel like way more people are going to buy it just because there isn't as much on the console.
Right.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned snipper clips in the first half, and I never got the chance to joke about how 2017 was in part the story of snipper clips' incredible luck.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, it's a fun game.
It is
but
a good
like,
game.
Yeah.
For sure, would have sold 1/1000th of the number of copies had it come out at any other time.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, good move on their part to milk the Dynasty Warriors trough or whatever. It seems instead of making mainline Fire Emblem games horrible and insulting to me by trying to appeal to weird, creepy styles, I'm just gonna get the thing that I always wanted all of my life. And not that I like it. Not to build up this Echoes game, it's like this fantastic thing. It's not the best Fire Emblem game that's ever existed, but it's like awakening levels of polish and quality, especially from a music side, in a remake of an old title that I'd never experienced before. So it's all new to me, so to speak. And it's made me go back and reevaluate a little bit the feelings that I had toward that shift, because as you guys both know, that is all that I think about every day of my life.
It's just to the point where, like, if I hear somebody say, like, this game is kind of like a Fire Emblem game, I'm like, I should really, like, let JJ know, because I don't know if this is going to be his last chance.
Telepath tactics, yes. But I've... I'm just so overwhelmed with emotion right now at the prospect of the thing that I love not dying into the Horus commodification of the market. Of course, it's to pile on more anti-economic principles into this episode. But it's going to be great to not have a piece of my soul filled with negativity anymore.
Yeah.
And I can safely ignore other qualities. I promise I won't ever make you guys have to play a Fire Emblem game now in order for me to relive that experience for the podcast. Because, you know, if things went badly, I might have to get my fix by forcing you guys along for the ride. And now it never needs to happen. So in a way, you know, 2017 was very good for you guys too, but just in a future-leaning sort of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think of... Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
I mean, don't hold on. Please keep going. The question I was going to ask was, you mentioned wanting to bring up a game, but now I can't remember if it was Fire Emblem Fates or if it was Fire Emblem Heroes.
Oh, no, it definitely wasn't Heroes. I'm not particularly interested in Heroes for the ways that we already described. It's because I think the Dynasty Warriors style of video game interaction is...
Heroes is the mobile game.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I keep confusing this. But mostly because Heroes and fucking Adventurers and Warriors, they're all the same fucking thing.
People always make fun of, like, the idea of, like, a new Friday the 13th movie. This is like Friday the 13th 37. Like the idea of like having these numbered sequels and everything being sequelized. Mm-hmm. Having a number is actually super helpful.
Extremely. Yep.
Fire Emblem's a great example of this because it's like Fire Emblem was the 7th one, and there's like Rising Sun, or I don't know which one that even would be.
That would, I
the
mean,
7th one was only called just Fire Emblem
because it was the
over
first one
here.
in North America.
Blazing Sword.
Yeah.
That's probably what I was thinking of.
But
in the Blazing Sword of Fire.
Right. But I don't particularly want to talk about Heroes, the mobile game, either. I feel like my entire opinion of it, because I played it for one day, is captured in our hilarious car driving episode.
In the only part of it that has like good sound quality,
because we're not moving in a car.
That we parked.
It's just a slot machine for anime people, and don't ever play it.
What's your hot take on the fact that in the like Reddit recap 2017, Fire Emblem Heroes was like the 4th fastest growing subreddit of the year?
Well, for the reasons I already described, it means I get to not pay attention to that trend, and all that money just will get partially redirected to things that I love.
Fair
so
enough.
Grow on, keep on growing.
Speaking of slot machines for anime people, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out.
Ooh.
This is a slot machine because you intentionally build your favorite anime people.
Not really. It's more like a slot machine.
Interesting. I assume there are women who become immediately commodified in this video game?
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big
aliens
fan.
And also
yes,
men.
but mostly women. So I'm a big fan of the original Xenoblade Chronicles, and I think Xenoblade Chronicles X is really good, but not quite the same level. But so I was excited for Xenoblade 2, and it is mostly pretty great, from like a design standpoint and a mechanic standpoint and everything, but the storytelling and the writing aren't as good, and also the art style is an anime art style, which I think is actually executed pretty well. Like the art direction is really good, but they, as a result of the art style, lean into anime tropes like pretty hard, which is not something that was in the rest of the series. And one way it has affected this is that you now have blades that you use in combat, which are basically what give you your weapons and your powers and abilities and everything. And most of them are like big-titted anime women who are like...
Oh, fantastic.
Just objectified.
Yeah.
Like
in the most literal
like
way.
even in the story, like the Pyra is like the main, like she's the MacGuffin, really.
Yeah,
like,
because she begins the whole
yes.
like the whole game. It's the first blade that you have as a character.
Yes,
that isn't like a lead pipe.
She's super central to the plot. She is the MacGuffin, and like her appearance is just like pointed out by characters and dialogue, and like it's so weird. It's like her boobs are bigger than her head, and she's like in a crop top thing, and like she's got these the tiniest of shorts that kind of just look like she has like a towel wrapped around her, and it's like a thong hiked up out of her shorts, like.
And no
to a
review.
Hilarious degree.
No review talks about this. I looked for it after, because I was obviously, when you expressed interest in the series, and I, especially in the first one, I had like a passing interest as well. I'm a JRPG guy. And I felt like I was in some kind of bizarro world.
Too much J, not enough RPG.
Indeed. That, oh my god, why didn't I think of that as the thesis statement for my comparison between Fates and every other Fire Emblem game? It's perfect. But... Like, no one. It's just this weird accepted thing within the context of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's especially jarring because the other games weren't like that.
yeah.
And like there were like some like they kind of had their cake and ate it too, where like there were like some sexy outfits you could put on the female characters, but it was all completely optional,
Right?
And not in the spotlight.
So you can finally sympathize to me. Is there like, did they implement like a petting mini game where you like have to make them love you by like touching them on a touch screen?
No,
on their face. For
at
no
least
reason?
not that I know of.
Oh, you don't dig any deeper into
That
that.
is one bare leg up on Fire Emblem Heroes.
Were there weird incest overtones to like every interaction two characters had at any point?
No incest, but there
Good.
were weird sexual overtones.
Good.
Plenty.
Right.
Fantastic.
My thing was because obviously I didn't play Xenoblade. I say obviously.
I would strongly recommend the original.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other two, you see after you've played the first one.
And I hope that this isn't like considered a spoiler by people, but like my biggest issue with Xenoblade 2 from a guy on a couch watching it.
Oh, I'm sure it seems way worse from.
Oh yeah, I'm sure the fact that I'm not like participating in the strategy is probably not is detrimental.
Yeah.
The game looks so good and has such good design most of the time, but then like you fight the final boss from like a platform really far away from it, and it bothers me to like a crazy extent.
Yeah, super like. Guess what the final boss of the game is?
God.
It's like super. Okay,
It's
no, it's
super
actually
God.
not.
No, God's actually your pal in this game.
Oh, neat.
It's not. Just think of like super anime trope. What would it be?
Frieza.
No, not Frieza.
I see where you're going with this, and I
Your
feel like I
your
would've-
brother.
Giant Gundam.
Yeah. It's a Gundam.
Okay.
So you're fighting it from a platform, and it's kind of like floating in space, and you whack it.
It looks so good, but then like you're just attacking basically a railing. The whole
And
time.
it's seemingly like there's no reason for it either.
Right.
Like it could just be on the ground with you.
It's so weird.
Strange. I mean, I would, in that game, looking again as the outside observer, the thing that always strikes me when you were playing it, Andy, was how beautiful the game was in terms of its vistas. Like when you
That's like
look
their-
away.
Yeah, that's their bread and butter.
Yeah. So of course I would want my final boss to be a vista of a boss, but it doesn't sound like it quite hit that either. Because it's not that
not this
big,
one, no.
right?
It's funny because like it is sort of because like the boss itself is like floating out there and it's like this big majestic Gundam, and then beyond that you can see like the horizon of a planet against the blackness of space.
Cool.
But like it's like you're on an observation platform.
Yep, you're on the launch deck.
God.
The first game had a better final boss. I won't spoil it.
Thank you. Yeah. I'll get there one day. I promise. Until then, I'll sit in my
Yeah.
little nest, happy that there's a little bit less J in my JRPG and a little bit more E for everyone and for European, because those are the two things that I really noticed.
E for everyone, E for European.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. That's what, when you compare the art styles between like Echoes and like a lot of the like Awakening Fate shift, the thing that they did intentionally was they put this like filter over the visual style that made it a little bit grainier in the same way. It has like a storybook feel, which I really like, and everyone's just like wearing the same armor that everyone wears in Fire Emblem games again. It's very comfortable for me. And more importantly, it's not strange or different.
Right.
And there is not a whole lot of gratuity in anything that's going on. You pal around with just like three people that are just like your friends, and they're not really tropish. They just act like goofy friends, and it's entertaining and hilarious. And it's just a video game. It's very nice. On this, I can't really give a holistic opinion on this because I have played it for 2 days. But on the complete opposite end of the scale of anime tropes being used really well and to fantastic success, I'm like 3 hours into Nier Automata because I got a GameStop gift card as part of the Christmas haul.
Probably off to a bad start considering we used it as a comparison point to the inappropriate way to use sexuality in our Bayonetta episode.
yeah.
Yeah.
How it basically tutorializes you to like look up her skirt while she's climbing ladders.
I was sorry. Fair. I wasn't using it from like gender representation point of view. I was using it from the point of view as final bosses that are large robots.
The first boss
Yes.
is a large robot in Nier Automata.
It uses mechanical. It uses anime tropes mechanically in interesting ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also generally like its sense of style so far. But again, everything right now
That's
is very
on my
tentative.
list of things to play.
It is a fun game. I couldn't shake the fact that I felt like the whole first, like the tutorial level of that game took place on the tanker from Metal Gear Solid 2.
It is, kind of weirdly like a Metal Gear setting.
Yeah. But otherwise, especially like when the big meat grinders come down, that's a fun time. So, I had a game that I wanted to sort of talk about that was released in 2017 that I played. And I think that you guys might be able to chime in on some games, but if you need time to think of one, I can go first.
Please, Chad. Please give us your video game. I want your video game all over me.
Yeah. So in lieu of doing a like top best great games, cool games, I'm gonna choose to talk about this game.
That sucks.
That is,
Worst games of 2017.
it's a really flawed game in a lot of ways, but it was enjoyable. It was simple in what it was going for, and really affecting. But by no means would I consider it like one of the best games that was released this year.
Yeah.
But I played a game called Masochisma, which is a sort of point and click graphic adventure game with like the one of the most unsettling art styles I've ever seen. It's like this grotesque. It's supposed to be like kind of childhood storybook illustrations, but everything is just off enough that like nothing looks supernatural. It instead looks supernatural.
So it's like the mind of a future murderer kind of thing?
It's exactly that, because the game itself is about the childhood and upbringing of a serial killer in the United States, and it is based on a true story. That I guess I don't want to say. The game never explicitly tells you, but if you're the kind of metagaming person, you can like figure it out. It has like ciphers and clues that if you want to get into it, you can.
Oh boy.
So I won't spoil who it's about, but it's not particularly important. But the game itself is like probably one of the most like gross and disturbing games that I've ever played, and the only game that I can think of that made me feel like physically unclean while playing.
Huge selling point, of course, for all games that Chad Brotherman loves.
It's
feeling physically unclean.
This is why I wanted to bring it up, because like not a lot of people have the same sensibilities that I do.
True.
But when you like, if you enjoy the kind of movies that I enjoy and like the kind of experiences that I do, you'll probably enjoy like this gross, weird. It's like a 2-hour game. It leaves messages on your desktop while you're playing it. Like it's
I love that kind of meta stuff.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
yeah. It's great, and it's like a fucking $1. So Masochisma.
I like that you're wearing a Muck t-shirt while making that recommendation.
It makes you feel like straight muck.
Yeah, it makes you feel like muck. In seriousness, though, it does make you feel gross, and that recommendation only goes for people who can stomach it. There's like a graphic scene of child murder in this game. Do not take that lightly. It's not pleasant.
Fair. Okay.
So a game I played this year was Horizon Zero Dawn.
Probably conspicuously absent from both of us talking.
I got that gifted to me as well during Christmas
you
from
have
my
it?
sister. I am 5 hours in or so.
How do you feel about it?
I feel like I've played better versions of this game before.
Yeah, me too. It's a game that like people have made like kind of a to-do about.
Yeah.
Get like talked about for Game of the Year and whatever.
It's actually won in some cases.
Yeah, all kinds of awards and whatever. And man, is it like, does it look pretty and it's super polished and So it has some of the best character animation I think I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It has a world design and direction that is unquestionably unique and is the reason that we paid attention to it in the first place, because you just screeched, like, the second that I showed up at E3.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit.
And
robot dinosaur hunting game.
And you sent it to me because you were like, oh, just... of like a red-haired natural woman in like a weird environment fighting robots with a bow and arrow. JJ will like that. You pushed it forward.
Yes.
And I paid attention to it. But
the thing about it is that I think they leaned way too heavily into the combat system. And like, that's basically like, because it's an open world game and it does have like some cities and some NPCs and some side quests, but it all feels super bare bones to me. And like, the meat and potatoes of the game is just supposed to be fighting the robots. And I don't think there's enough of them, like different types. I don't think there's enough variety for it to like sustain like a 60-hour game on just the combat. Yeah.
It feels to me like, and I'm just to the point where I'm out of the primary village and I'm really starting to dig into the open world stuff where you find your billion side quest moment when you're playing through any open world game, because most of your stereotypes about open world games fit this game as well. And this feels to me like the best game that Ubisoft could ever produce, but that game is still like 1 to 2 notches below Breath of the Wild, and that just feels like something. It feels like the best version of something I've already seen in the past, and makes it super unfortunate that it exists in the same year as Breath of the Wild.
But I mean, I did finish it and did enjoy my time with it, though. I just it seems like a game that's quality is being like overrated, but I feel like kind of bad levying that criticism against it.
Yeah, because I feel like if we had been given this game like 2 years ago, it would have been way easier.
My mind.
Yeah.
I think like now I've played the least bit of any of you. I've played it for about I want to say 3 or 4 minutes. So I can't make any sort of claims about the mechanical like feel of the game itself. But yeah, it does appear to be kind of a technical achievement. Like, it looks so good, and just generally you're able to do a lot of things. But it does it really grabs you with the whole like crafting thing right off the bat, which is kind of what drove me away from it, is the fact that like you're always just like picking up resources off the ground.
That's kind of just how I play.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, it's okay. I mean, I do the same thing. Everyone, when you put a UI element on the screen like that, is going to be tempted.
Yeah.
People don't generally ignore stuff like that. And it was actually the UI that almost drove me away from the game. It's like literally until I found a way to make it dynamic in the options, which does exist, and improve my experience dramatically. Is because once, even really early into the game and through the tutorial sections, I just felt like I was being assaulted in the same way that you're kind of like metaphorically assaulted when you look at the map screen of Assassin's Creed 2.
And just see like a million icons everywhere.
Yeah, it's like that, but inescapable. It's like that, but the map is coming for you. And if I couldn't have made it dynamic, I would have stopped playing the game like an hour into it, just because I felt like I was just constantly being inundated with things that didn't matter and weren't producing like meaningful gameplay experiences to me. And that makes me so sad, considering how much I love the setting, because I really wish that this game had been pared down from like a AAA game to like a double B game. Because I would have rather, I would have rather have them like really not tried to make this try and compete in that space, and just leaned into the cool, unique elements of the setting, like how you can take control of creatures.
I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
But side note, nerdy animation thing. I think Aloy's walk cycle might be like the best walk cycle of any character in any game that I've ever seen. Like they nail a female walk. Like, she has like, because like you're like, you run into a town or whatever, and then like you have to walk around, and like it has like just the perfect amount of hip sway that like a female walk has. Like they nailed it, and it feels so natural. It's like crazy.
Yeah. It's not like, I also like totally stiff or like way over exaggerated.
Right, yeah. It's not like a sexy walk. Yeah. It's like an actual like natural female walk.
It's like a human walk.
It's like a human walk. I also like how she like stumbles over and kind of uses her hands when she runs up a hill.
Gonna get like Dan Jones on this. Yeah.
But anyway,
You mean Doug Jones?
No, who's Doug Jones?
Oh. Man, this is really revealing my tastes of things. I don't know who that first guy is.
Yes, you do.
Do I?
Extra credits.
Oh, it's that Dan Jones.
Well, there's like 5 Dans in extra credits alone.
Yeah, he's
so.
the one who's an animator. Doug Jones is an actor who frequently works in prosthetics because he's also like a contortionist. So he frequently will run around on hands and knees in an unsettling, disgusting way.
Man, that was a journey.
Yeah, it sure was.
Nice.
Watch Doug Jones movies. That's my recommendation. He plays Abe Sapien in the Hellboy movies.
Oh.
Yeah.
Does he like do that?
He just does that. It's weird.
Okay. But don't watch that. Watch beautiful, wholesome animations in Horizon Zero Dawn.
you know what came out in 2017 that I totally forgot came out in 2017?
Yes.
Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue.
Oh no.
Oh no. Goodbye, Chad.
I'll see you later.
It's been a long time.
It has been a long. It's been. Never mind.
Abandoned joke.
Yeah, get off that Boston reference right now.
How do you feel?
I feel unsatisfied.
I do too.
Now it feels like you can tell they had material for like a whole game, and they had to pare it down to like a 5-hour experience.
Yes.
And it just like it suffers for it.
It suffers in terms of its pacing. I am not down on its mechanics.
In what way? I'm not super hot on it either.
I agree. It's starting to age in the same, not as
okay,
badly.
You mean it in that way? That's the way I think it hasn't held up.
Right. In the same way that like
combat.
Not if you take like one step after Dynasty Warriors, you enter Kingdom Hearts combat.
Yes.
Early
action combat.
Right. Where you have lots of freedom of motion and lots of AoEs and everything's like a little bit floaty. And it made up for that in a lot of the ways that lots of anime things try and make up for that, which is spectacle creep.
Oh, yeah.
And the things that you do
this
there...
has that out the ass.
Yes. I think are interesting. Weirdly, the thing that they showed off the most, the like giant technical achievement of the swarm of Heartless, was not the thing that I thought was interesting. I thought the world design was the most interesting when you're like moving through broken spaces. Obviously,
I was glad to see that. There were like puzzly elements.
Yes.
Like stuff that would have been in the first game.
They
brought back.
I got stuck going through 2.8 actually. It was during the
the mirrors.
I don't know. I forget if they were literally mirrors, but like the endless room. Where
with the reflected floor.
Yeah. I got stuck there for a long period of time, and it was the first time in a while I felt like I was being intellectually challenged by a game like that. And it was, of course, beautiful, as they are in most of the time. But yeah, I'm not like it lowered my expectations, but not below a line where I'm not excited for it anymore. I'm still excited for what's coming, and I think that I will enjoy it. On a technical level, but it wasn't transcendent, and that's why you had to remind me that this happened in 2017.
Well, I mean, it was like January 1st or something.
Yeah.
Like literally a year ago.
Yeah.
But no, I feel basically the same.
It's... I'm so...
And also, I feel like once Mickey showed up, the pacing was super rushed, and then the story felt really shoehorned at the end.
Yeah.
For people like me, which I have to assume is not just me, what is new in 2.8?
Oh, God. I don't even know if I could explain what 2.8 is to somebody who's not kept up with the series.
At the end of Birth by Sleep, the PS...
Are you asking, like, mechanically or story?
Just, like, what is the new content? Like, was it not a re-release of other games?
No,
like,
it's new. It's straight new.
It's all new stuff?
And it's generally a demo of the kind of mechanics we're going to see in 3.
Okay.
It's 0.2. a fragmentary passage was like a new, like 5-hour like game.
Gotcha. Okay.
2.8 is the collection that it came on.
Yes.
Which also had the remake of
Dream Dot
Distance, which was the 3DS one.
And that weird, horrible story thing.
And then they had that movie.
Yeah.
AKA that weird, horrible story thing. Which I actually kind of liked.
Aesthetically. We already had this conversation.
Yeah. But anyway.
But yeah, the reason what he's talking about with the compression is because at the end of that PSP prequel game that we both really like, they teased the existence of a sequel, Birth by Sleep 2, that will never exist.
Right.
And is now this thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can tell that they had a full game's worth of content that they cut down to 5 hours.
Instead allowing it to act as the pseudo demo for 3.
It's just kind of like a disappointing cock tease the whole time.
But even the most disappointing of cock teases is still...
It's still a cock tease.
Yeah, it's still happy. Yeah.
There's still a cock there.
Let's not end this podcast all half-cocked.
Right.
Is there any other content you would like to squeeze in here?
I'm sad I didn't play more games in 2017, which is part of the reason that I'm trying to like slam out like Nier Automata.
It's already 2018. You're too late.
He'll play it so fast that he'll go back in time.
Yeah, delete gamer skills, of course.
Yeah.
God.
Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What are we doing next time?
Next time we're going to be talking about Mirror's Edge, as forewarned on the previous episode. So sorry about this delay, and also sorry about us not having like a format, which obviously makes us do the just say stupid shit for an hour and a half. So I hope you enjoyed it, that stupid shit, and until next time, if you want to get a hold of us, you can do so. noclippodcast@gmail.com. You can find all of our other
conferences.
All of our other confirmation.
I sure fucked that one up.
Dude,
you can find all of the rest of our contact information on our website at splattershot.pro or noclippodcast.com.
Oh man, can that count as my favorite episode? The fact that you registered us to splattershot.pro?
That's my favorite thing I did in 2017.
Good.
All of our past episodes are on there. If I decide I'm going to start putting cards on YouTube videos, I'll like throw some up and be like, look, this came out in 2017. So did this one. Also, maybe this third one, which is probably from a game from 2005, knowing us.
Chad, what are cards?
You know, like at the end of a YouTube video, people put up those links
like
to other videos.
Oh, yeah, sweet.
Yeah. I'll put those up just so I can make that joke.
Good.
Also, what about this episode?
What about it?
Oh, it's a good one.
We should start doing an end card.
Yeah, I think we will.
Why not?
Yeah. Anyway, thanks. Goodbye.
Thanks. Let's go put some coins in that slot machine for anime people.
Yeah.
Something.
No clip to no script. There's never been a script.
You read the beginning like off Wikipedia.
That's
so
true.
It's kind of like a script.
Our script. The No Clip Podcast, our script is Wikipedia.